Well, fate seems to have contrived to actually put us in the same place and the same time.
Doesn't happen very often.
No, and not only that, but just out there, 150 yards away, something like that, is the sea, the channel.
Do you know what? Even now, here I am, a man in my 60s, and yet every time we come round a bend in the road, and it doesn't matter where it is or what part of the world we're in, that every time you see the sea, oh look, I can see the sea. It's a bit like seeing a rainbow. Magic never disappears, does it?
I wonder what it is. Is there something in the human spirit embedded in there about that? Which
maybe.
Kind of, but being so close to the sea, we thought we would talk about the sea from the perspective of prehistory, of course.
Well, it's such a massive subject, isn't it? And it doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think, that we have such distorted views now. We have such distorted views about what the sea must have been to our distant ancestors. Because we think of the sea as somewhere treacherous, potentially dangerous, potentially life-threatening when you're on it. But way back then, when walking the land was probably just as dangerous as anything else, with bears round the corner and wolves round the corner and brigands trying to steal you whatever round the corner, that maybe just setting out across the ocean was the better option.
I know we've been having this conversation about the impossibility of getting into the mindset or having the perspective that people would have had. But I think here and now, the purpose of what we're trying to do is because so much, vast majority of archaeology done is land-based. So a lot of our reporting and the stuff that we know comes from inland, or tends to be inland excavations.
Yeah.
There's a lot about that. But I think what we're missing in that is how important the sea was to the progression of farming and the Neolithic package and all that. Actually, I tell you what, we are so focused around Western Europe, and although we say that we're going to talk about the sea, we're not going to talk about the sea from a global aspect.
No,
because there are limits to what we know. We're not going to be able to talk about coastal regions of the Americas or of the Far East,
or the oldest evidence for tuna fishing in East Timor, even.
That's right. Well, in passing, 45,000 years ago?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. No, the stuff we're talking about is all based around the Aegean, the Mediterranean, and
yes.
And that. Nevertheless, we hope it sort of gives, just skews our view for a moment to how important it is and how busy the sea was. I think
that's a huge one.
Yeah,
that's a huge one, because we look out. In fact, you can look out now, and there's a couple of fishing boats out and things like that. But an intriguing thing for me, again, it's our modern mindsets that we have roads, and we take that completely for granted. Forget the speed of travel; we've got roads, and so if we want to go to the next village or something, we walk along the road. Yeah. Well, imagine a time when you might have the odd footpath and what have you, but if it's a relatively newly settled land, then actually particularly down here, zipping down the coast, going to the next bay, where there'll be a settlement because that's where the river, the next river is coming out or what have you. Far easier to just get in a boat and zip down the coast. And we don't think like that anymore. We think about getting in the car and it being 5 minutes away.
And that's just looking at it from the perspective of day to day.
Yeah.
We talk about migration as well.
Well, I think that's the thing, because we've so lost the sense of boats being a day-to-day thing that if you actually hopped into a boat regularly, even if it was just to hop out there and catch your dinner, bring back a mackerel. The fact that if you get in a boat more or less every day just for casual stuff, then the notion of doing a long distance journey would probably not feel anything like as threatening. But we don't do that. So
talking of long distance journeys is all very well as talking about just saying that the seas were busy in relative terms, but busier than we think they would have been. So let's talk about the evidence for that. In our realm of the Neolithic, let's keep those parameters in, because it's only within those parameters that really we've got access to archaeological evidence, or the vast majority of the bulk of the archaeological evidence, is from the Neolithic.
Well, of course, if we're going to go back as far as the Neolithic or even Mesolithic, then the amount of data, the amount of remains that we have it doesn't seem like a lot, but then that's because we're only going to have shipwrecks or boat wrecks, because otherwise it wouldn't have lasted in the archaeological record. And even when it is wrecks, most of them would have been so close to the surface that they wouldn't have lasted in the archaeological record anyway. So the fact that we have so many dugout canoes, for example,
which are usually inland finds anyway.
Yes, or certainly coastal. Yes, river and coastal. I don't know.
Lagoon, lake.
Yeah.
Or even sort of boggy marshland and stuff like that. Yes. Anyway, carry on. Not Neolithic, but Bronze Age. I mean, there's 3 wrecks just down the coast from here, Bronze Age wrecks, and because that's all that's left, it still gives this sense that there weren't that many. But it's the other way around, isn't it? How many must there be? A little bit further out to sea, under the sands, maybe a mile out, because it's not far for a boat to travel at all on a casual daily fish. And yet, there's no way that people would find them. Yeah. But direct evidence aside, i.e. a wreck, or the remains of a wreck, i.e. whatever its cargo was that may have survived, the bulk of the evidence we have is indirect evidence of seafaring.
Yeah.
So if you find something there, that means that must have come from there. And the first real strong, almost mind-exploding evidence of that is in Franchthi Cave, in Greece, where we find.
Yes, we do.
Where we find. What am I like? And that finds at levels indicating 5,000. What am I saying? At levels indicating 12,000 years BC.
Is it BC? It'll be under F.
This F, Barry Cunliffe says by 11,000 BC, they were making sea journeys from Franchthi Cave to the island of Melos, 120 kilometres, that's 75 miles away, to bring back much sought after shiny black obsidian.
And you can't argue with that.
Not really, no. From which to fashion tools. So obsidian, it's a word that's been on our lips a great deal over the past few months, since we've turned our attention to the first farmers coming across the Aegean, and we have it from Franchthi Cave onwards through to the place we visited, Çukuruçi. It was so great to find that place.
Chukarichi.
Yeah, in the field near Ephesus, and to return just indicate where these incredibly important tools came from. Because at Chukarichi, Hoyuk was found the huge cache of obsidian blades, all made from obsidian that also came from Milos.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the Turkish coast we're talking about. So, yeah, obsidian, and with good reason, because it's the indicator, it's the major indicator and proof that people were circulating round the Aegean from that point I just mentioned at the Franchthi Cave, 11,000 BC at least, through to and beyond Chukarichi Hoyuk, which dates to 6,000,
6,200 BC.
Yes, and earlier. I think the date of the obsidian is that, but the site itself dates.
The site itself.
Yeah,
oh yes,
6,800 I think goes back to something like that.
Yeah, and of course one of the important things not to forget about obsidian is that it's something that would last in the archaeological record. So everywhere you go, that we see obsidian all the time, and we think that there's this massive thing that they were taking obsidian all over the place. And yes, clearly it was, but all the other things, like whether it was animals, which we know they took around the place as well, or whatever else, and we don't know what else. But clearly it wasn't the only thing that they were carrying. It was just an aspect of the needs of daily life. And I think it's important not to forget that we have this concept of an obsidian trade as kind of being more dominant than anything else.
Yeah.
But it's more dominant than anything else in the archaeological record.
Yeah, it's all we got. Yeah. So it's all we talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other fact of the matter is deep sea fishing.
Yeah, incredible. Yes.
Chukarichi Hoyuk again. Yes. Incredible evidence of the variety of fish that were being harvested from the sea there, including tuna. And as much as we know about tuna fishing, it's a given that it requires some skill and effort and communal effort, and because tuna, I think bluefin tuna they were doing, so they're not small fish.
They are not small fish.
They're very quick fish, and they're quite deep sea-ish fish, tend to be.
They are. I mean, certainly there's there is a migration route of the bluefin tuna, which is over there in the Mediterranean. So clearly they knew, they must have been conversant with when the migrations were, I would imagine. Anyway, from the amount of tuna that's been found. But even so, as you say, that's not a small fish. What sort of boat are you using?
Well, that's the whole thing, isn't it? What drives what? Because tuna fishing, if it's a matter of survival, if it's a matter of getting your food, then that is a driver of technology, for want of a better way of putting it. These kinds of needs drive technology to be better. Survival drives technology, or if you're on the edge and you don't have any other options. So, huge question mark over whether, something like tuna fishing or the need to do deep sea fishing drove the development of seafaring technology and knowledge in the Aegean, for where else, and how sophisticated that seafaring ability was. We'll come back to that probably a bit, but one thing we've got to talk about before we leave that area in the Eastern Mediterranean is talk about Cyprus and the earliest inhabitation of Cyprus.
What were they thinking?
Well, even 10,500 years ago, even allowing for sea level rise, Cyprus is 50, 60 miles is a sea crossing of 50,
Yeah.
60 miles. And we know that people were there in the Mesolithic from 10,500 BC. We know that largely because they wiped out a population of pygmy hippopotami, but that's a side issue.
Yeah, but they must have tasted fantastic.
Well, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? No, sad to lose the hippopotami. But there we are, human beings being human beings. But the farming package, the Neolithic package, didn't arrive until, 2,000 years later, 8,500 BC on Cyprus. But here we get the big question mark, because they were bringing farming with them, i.e. they need to bring domestic animals. How does that happen in 50, 60 miles of open sea?
Yes. Now, there was a calculation, and I can't remember who actually did the calculations on this, but there was the notion that the transportation of that sort of package, to call it a package, would probably have involved a flotilla of boats. So, 12, 15 boats travelling together. And certainly when you think that they were taking livestock, it doesn't matter how solid your boat is, that taking livestock with you, breeding livestock, because they're not taking meat, they're taking breeding livestock. And we know that they took wild boar and domestic pig and fallow deer, for goodness sake. We'll transport those in a boat. How many to a boat? They clearly knew exactly what they were doing.
They didn't arbitrarily set off one day thinking, no, there might be somewhere over the horizon.
Let's take the pigs for a sail. No,
yes. No, I mean, that is the thing so much of this is not people arbitrarily upping sticks and deciding to go somewhere else. These things happen organically and with a huge amount of planning. Otherwise, they wouldn't stand a chance of succeeding. It's not only that you've got to bring, breeding stock with you in order for that to thrive, but what about your own population itself? There's a minimum number of people that have got to be cross the seas to establish a colony. Now, over what period of time that happens? Obviously, 60 miles isn't a vast distance, so there could be a certain amount of toing and froing. Nevertheless, it's not accidental. It's absolutely deliberate, and you've got to set off with the security that that pretty much that you're going to get there. Again, question what sort of boats, and I think I say dealt with, we're skipping through all these things, talking about what sorts of boats, and now's probably the time to skip round into the west of Italy. And go to La Marmotta, which where is found the only model that it seems that we have for a seafaring vessel in the Neolithic.
7,000 years old. And they found 4 boats at La Marmotta. And the really intriguing thing there is, of the 4 boats found, they are really quite different in size, aren't they? The smallest is only about 10 foot long, and the largest is over 45 feet long. And so clearly they were used for different purposes. And whilst La Marmotta it's a lake site, isn't it now, but connected to the sea, or it was then connected to the sea. And those bigger boats were certainly capable of ocean travel.
And not only capable, but the details about them that indicate they were set up for
the fact that
open seas.
that what they found with those boats was that they actually use 4 or 5 different woods, in the construction. So they're very deliberately used with, with something like oak, a very solid, rigid wood, being used for as the main body of the boat, and yet something that needed to have some flex in it, so it didn't snap with weather conditions or what have you. That they were used. So I don't remember the whole list, but certainly lime and poplar were in there as well. And that in itself, the fact they were using different types of wood and not arbitrarily. Yeah. They're used for very specific different parts of the boat building. Yeah. Now, what length of time, over what length of time, did that degree of craftsmanship take to come into place? How long were people building boats for them to make a decision on, this is the boat, this is the wood that you use in this instance? That's way more than a generational thing. Mm.
And because of the detail in there, although the basis of it is a huge hollowed out log, the largest of them, because it's about 45 foot long.
Over 45 feet, yeah.
The details contained, like separate pieces of wood inserts or attachments with lug holes.
T-shaped pieces.
T-shaped, yes. Which it can be argued that's for rigging, i.e. for the erection of a sail. Mm. I have it in my mind also, the largest ones had a transom where you could mount a steering oar.
Yes. Yes, it did have transom.
Mm-hmm. But the thing about what we're getting round to is Monoxylon. Mm. I mean, these are Monoxylon boats. That's a generic term for
a single tree that has been
dug out. Yes, but Monoxylon is a name given to a series of expeditions managed by or driven by a team out of the Czech Republic, which how many? There have been 3 expeditions now, I think, in the Monoxylon. 2 in the Aegean.
It's at least 3, yes.
2 in the Aegean and 1 in crossing the Mediterranean, and they all lived to tell the tale. I mean, basically, they were incredibly successful, weren't they?
They were. Well, the biggest boat.
Yeah.
Good grief! It's big. Now they were lucky, weren't they? That they'd actually managed to acquire a recently fallen oak tree that was about the right size.
The last expedition.
Was it the last one?
Yeah.
And so it's something. It's this huge thing. I mean, you don't think about it, do you? When you go and see an oak tree standing, a mature oak tree standing, you don't imagine that lying on its side and dug out. That's a big boat. And I was intrigued actually that when they did their voyage, that the photographs that I've seen of the boat, now they had 20-ish men rowing that boat, 18 or 20 men rowing that boat, which when I looked at it, my first thought, well, you're not leaving enough room for cargo there.
If we're talking about trade.
Yeah. And so for me, I think clearly they wouldn't have filled the boat with people. You could have had half that amount, 10 rowers maybe, or even fewer, and still have travelled a good distance with a good cargo, whatever that may have been.
So it's a wonderful piece of experimental archaeology, incredible, a huge team effort.
Hats off to them. It's an extraordinary thing to have achieved.
Absolutely. And it's great to have it proved that men are possible of crossing. I mean, I think the big stretch that they had fingers crossed over and they wanted to prove it could be done was the 100 kilometres from, is it Santorini or is it Milos itself, down to Crete, which is, the biggest open sea thing. And I think that's the thing that most people have had. Dugout canoes on an open sea, pull the other one.
Yeah.
But
no, they knew what they were doing. The evidence is there.
But now the trouble is, It's the question of the thing of it's the evidence we have is the only evidence. The La Marmotta canoes are the only evidence, and they've been pounced upon because it's such a wonderful, unique thing to find evidence of seafaring boats in the Neolithic. But that doesn't mean they didn't have larger boats with sails. And all the rest of it. It just.
But it's such an important point to make because, and it's the problem with all archaeology. You've only got what's left.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they've found these boats in a very safe environment, it's in a lakeside environment, and that's why they've survived.
Yeah.
If it was something that had been, say they are a coastal settlement, and the boats are moored offshore, well, they wouldn't have lasted any time.
Absolutely. But what the tantalising thing, do you remember they found an obsidian core, lump of obsidian core off Capri?
Yes.
That they dating to the Neolithic, but of course it sunk in the sea. No chance of finding whatever the boat was.
I actually really like that. So you've got a lump of obsidian out in the middle of the ocean that proves that a boat went down there, but that's all you've got left.
Yeah. And that's so often the case, though. Yeah. That's what people don't realise. It announced in the press, shipwreck of Neolithic shipwreck. Not so much the ship of a ship left, unfortunately. Yeah. So, I mean, the hope and the prayer is that we get more remains of very early boats to tell us what was going on, because the indirect evidence would suggest that they were applying that, going around the Aegean and the Mediterranean in larger boats than we think they had. Can't say that for sure.
No. Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that so there are the much bigger boats that we know about much later. But if you're going to consider numbers and the level of trade that happened when you get into the Bronze Age, for example, well, does that mean that they didn't have the bigger boats earlier, or does it just mean that it's just numbers now, that statistically you're going to have more wrecks from the Bronze Age, which we do?
Yeah.
But some of the boats in the Bronze Age, they are big vessels, and you can't discount the possibility that they could well have had really substantial boats back then, because also we've got the fact that we have the dugout canoes that have been found. Something that we have very little evidence for, but we know would have existed, is hide boats. So some of the early coracles, for example, they don't last in the record. We know they existed. Now, how big could you make a hide boat? We don't know.
Yeah, a hide boat on the open sea, because they're lightweight and they're
that's absolutely
prone to being blown this way and the other.
Wow! If you're going to talk about the wind, though, we don't need to go there. But I'm just saying, that all the different details that we know, there was a bit of this and there was a bit of this and there was a bit of this. So we can't say that the bigger stuff didn't exist. It may have done. And certainly when you look at the level of trade, I mean, like we were saying before about taking animals that distance. All right. I've seen a llama being ferried in a small reed boat, and that's quite an alarming thing to see. But so it's possible, and all right, it might be likely that they were taking deer and pigs in small boats. Maybe they just took young animals, lots of little piglets. That would be easier.
Maybe so.
But the point is they did it.
Yeah. Before we leave the Aegean and the sort of Obsidian world, there's a big question mark, and I think it's a really important one, and one that will come up in another guise later on as we get round nearer to home here, and that is who taught who. Where did the skills come from? Because obviously, if we're finding obsidian from 11,000 BC in Franchthi Cave, they had considerable seafaring skills in the Mesolithic.
Mm-hmm.
And how far were they getting? The trouble with investigating it is that a lot of, if there were settlements around the coastal regions there, they're now probably mostly underwater.
Yes.
And what we're trying to glean, what archaeologists are trying to work out at the moment, is what kind of interactions were going on between the early farmers on those coasts, down the west coast of Anatolia, and the Mesolithic people that already seem to be sailing around the Aegean. Mm-hmm. Now, to sail from the Levant or wherever, or Anatolia to Cyprus, you already need seafaring skills. But the question mark seems to be, there seems to be a mélange of of skills coming together at places like Czukarici. Who's learning from whom about how far you can travel?
See, I would have thought that people would have been living by the sea forever.
Yeah.
We know, going way back, the earliest evidence for certainly maritime exploitation, so whether they were just using rafts rather than boats, but evidence for that goes back, I think the oldest they've ever found is like 900,000 years ago in Indonesia. Mm. If people have been exploiting the water from the deepest prehistory, then I think that general maritime use must have been, by the time you get to the Mesolithic, I think it must have been just something that people did. So I think those skills would have been in place way, way back. You remember the Mesolithic boat building? That makes it sound grandiose, but the boat construction site that they found off the Isle of Wight, which is that way, which it showed carpentry skills that had previously only been found thousands of years later. So the fact that, going back 8,000-9,000 years off the coast of Britain, that these skills existed.
Yeah. Put that in context. If a lobster can find Mesolithic timber skills down in the Solent, right? Just that one. Can you imagine? It must have been.
I hope nobody ate that.
This is the thing, trying to get across the busyness of life.
Yeah.
Going way, way back. I think that if we can leave people with an impression of something, we think in terms of people being sparse and.
Yes. We should qualify that for people who don't know that.
Sorry.
The Boulder Cliffs.
Boulder Cliffs, I remember.
Boat building location was found because a diver was watching a lobster cleaning out its burrow, and worked flints were coming out with the rubbish. Yeah. So yes, all hail that lobster.
Yeah. Talking about Mesolithic, Neolithic farmers and stuff, I hold my hand up, of trying to compartmentalize or automatically compartmentalizing people and saying who informed who and, where was the crossover. And there wouldn't have seemed to have been a crossover back there. This is must try to cleave away from that mindset of a division between two. It would have been much more an organic and natural process.
Something that's tricky, and it's not wholly unknowable, it's just difficult to really put the pieces together, is that people probably wouldn't have been migrating into a vacuum. There's already people there.
That's right. And they're not primitive people. That's my point. They're not primitive people. They're already thriving, and being sophisticated in their environment.
So bringing together those skills that have been acquired from quite potentially different cultures as well. It is intriguing. And because so little of that actually sits in the archaeological record, it's very difficult to create the whole picture, isn't it?
So that's the circulation in the Aegean and whatever trade. We could go down an avenue of trying to work out what sort of trade was going on and what sort of things were being produced and transported besides obsidian, but no doubt it was. That sort of, those are questions for another time.
Yeah,
maybe.
Fascinating though.
But I think we need to move, down the timeline a bit chronologically speaking and talk just a bit about the Mediterranean, which has a very similar story as far as obsidian is concerned and the trade around that. Because when the first reports came out about the Marmotta canoes, they were very much trying to point out that in the Mediterranean around there, we've got the island of Lipari, and another one I can't remember the name of. I think there are on Sardinia. On Sardinia, there's there's a source of obsidian there. So, and the obsidian from those sources were being traded all over the Tyrian Sea, and beyond up into the Balkans and even to the north coast of Africa. And all over the place, Sicily and all up through Italy. So the networks, the importance of the plying the seas can't have been lost on anybody. And for people acquiring obsidian inland, way away from the sea, how storied would that material be by the time it got to them? What stories would there be about how far away it had come from? What adventures, what odysseys had taken place to add value to this incredible black stuff. So, like I say, same thing going on.
And again, the frustration that it's the obsidian that always sits there, giving you a false impression of of quite how much was
and
probably
by obsidian alone.
Well, I'll tell you one that I find really interesting, which I admit I'm leaping forwards in time because it's Bronze Age, but it's relevant because they found in Israel, this is 2022, this was discovered that they found some bottles of opium. So opium probably used as painkiller or something, we don't know. But the thing is that what the lab analysis showed was that the opium came from Turkey.
Yeah.
And the opium was shipped to Cyprus, where it was put in these very particular types of bottles. They were these ring-based bottles that they look like poppy seeds in themselves, or the heads of poppy flowers. And then from Cyprus, it was transported to Israel. Now, the thing is that even though this is Bronze Age, the point is that if you've got a network where a product is being taken to one place in order to be shipped to another, then clearly that's a trading network that has been in place for a very long time.
And there's a process going on.
Yeah.
Shipped to Cyprus to be bottled, to be shipped.
Yeah. And so I think that even though that is Bronze Age, how long must that maritime relationship, if you like, have been in place for that to have become a thing?
Yeah. Well, we're not far off, indeed, in time or space, from a shipwreck that will circle around to probably...
That is true, yes.
Probably a bit later on. No, I'm glad you mentioned that. The thing to say about, getting back to migrations now, coming away from trade, etc., the first wave of the Neolithic package coming over. One lot had gone up the Danube. I mean, I'm being a bit facile here, but one lot had gone up the Danube, basically up the Balkans and up the Danube. But the southern lot had been leapfrogging along the coast, up Croatia, around Italy, along to the south of France, and eventually to round Iberian Peninsula, up the Atlantic seaboard, and eventually what we know now as the UK and Ireland. So I don't know. There are several elements to that. One is the maintenance of the seafaring tradition, because the routes along the Mediterranean seem to have been leapfrogging by sea and creating enclaves on the coast and in the littoral behind. And maybe even skipping past indigenous Mesolithic people, hunter-gatherers anyway, at that point. So it's very difficult to get a complexion from a seafaring point of view and from a chronological migration point of view, because although there are plenty of excavations being done on the coastal areas, I think, there are the number 350 or so, comes to mind. But even if you've got that kind of the data coming from those, although we've got radiocarbon dates from them, there are all sorts of problems with the dates that confuse the chronology. Well, I think we like things to happen in a nice sort of linear fashion, so that we've got a nice narrative. They went from there to there to there to there, and there, and then did that there, and then they went round, all that. But
people aren't like that.
Well, the evidence isn't like that. That's the trouble. And try as we might to tell a nice, graceful, organic story, the data doesn't seem to be giving us that gift. So no more than the archaeologists, we can no more paint a picture of what went on in the Mediterranean and beyond than they can, except obviously that it was a progression of some sort, but probably more complex than we can describe here. So, talking about migrations, it is said or is thought that from the south of France, from the Montpellier kind of area, one lot of them travelled up north of the Pyrenees to reach the Bay of Biscay, put it that way. That would be and then travelled up the Atlantic seaboard, or right round the Iberian Peninsula. I don't think we've got much direct evidence of for migrations actually around the Iberian Peninsula, but there are question marks about that. I think the big question is who got to Brittany first, who got to the northwest of France first, who got to Ireland first, and who got to England first, if we can put them in those geographical frameworks.
Yes, and it's probably unanswerable, isn't it?
I mean, when I say I mean who of the first farmers?
Yeah. It's also tantalising. The other thing is, you mentioned Ireland.
Yeah.
And the thing about Ferreter's Cove. Now, the thing about Ferreter's Cove in Ireland is that you could interpret that information as a failed migration.
Yeah.
Somebody tried, and then just it vanished.
Yeah.
It didn't work until what's the gap between Ferreter's Cove? I don't remember the dates. The gap between Ferreter's Cove evidence for people arriving
pre-4000 BC.
Yeah, so it's around that period. I mean, it was a very busy time. Was it 6,000-7,000 years ago?
We'll just say Ferreter's Cove. It's the Dingle Peninsula, I think, right down in the south.
The south of Ireland.
Yes. Right down in the south of Ireland, which is, if that's where they landed, that's a long sea voyage for somebody. It's quite treacherous waters,
and you have to wonder if it was deliberate.
Well, they took. That's the thing, though. The evidence for them being there is the cattle bones that they found.
Yes, which is. It always makes me smile, actually, because it may be, and in fact, Alison Sheridan has written a lot about this, hasn't she? But one of the interpretations is that people arrived there with their cattle as breeding stock or milking stock or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But then the people that were actually there that's a nice bit of food, so they ate them all, and that was.
They raided them. This is cattle raiding.
Cattle raiding.
Was it endemic or just become a thing at that point?
So failed already. But no, what intrigues me a little bit about Ferreter's Cove is that, so we know that they got there from the Iberian Peninsula, is what we think. But the thing is, if there was a storm of whatever sort and they got blown off course and ended up in Ireland, did they deliberately go to Ireland, or were they on their way to Brittany or wherever, but just got blown off course?
But were they all the way from the Iberian Peninsula?
I thought they were, but I'm not sure.
Bit
of in itself a red herring, academic.
Yeah.
The thing that still applies wherever they came from.
Well, it's still a long way.
The thing, yes, it is. It's a hell of a long way over those waters.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time
carrying cattle.
Yes. Was that a deliberate voyage?
If you set off with cattle, I think so. There's a clue. There's a bit of a clue.
But was that the intended destination?
Good point. Yeah.
To put it more specifically. Yeah.
Yes. were they intending for the shore just here?
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean.
So, yes. Wow. I mean, if they did make landfall Ferreter's Cove, good on them, because otherwise they'd have been first across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, there isn't much we can say definitively about the migrations.
No.
But coming forward a little bit, after the farming packages arrived in northwest Europe, in what's now France, then we've got an explosion. Megaliths happen. And there's...
Yes, that tiny detail.
Exploding from Brittany and down to Portugal and in northern Iberia and spreading out. But also we've got trade exploding again. And the big question mark about that trade is, was it happening overland? Because we've got trade that we know of in jadeite, variscite, and they're getting back to Brittany, being processed and being exported back out across the seas and inland, of course. And the question mark is, how was that happening? And the indications are that there was quite a long sea voyage going on right round the coast of Iberia, given that we've got evidence of the deposition. We've got evidence of the jadeite and variscite in those areas, and the tradition of megalithic burial going on, wherever that bit came from. So I think the word is, again, we've got to think in terms of busyness. And not just in a being busy, B-U-S-Y, but there was business going on. You know what I mean? That level of sophistication of stuff and levels of exchange and knowledge of where the raw materials were as well. That's another issue that's getting aside from the sea. But if we're talking about the sea, we've got to talk about the remaining hunter-gatherer, fisher gatherers, whatever, on the coast of Armorica, on the coast of Brittany there, that we know from the burials on Edic and Teviec. And we can talk about the interaction between the first farmers and them, and maybe the first megaliths started off in that kind of interaction. But there were powerful people. And I can't imagine that part of the power came from sailing the seas. And here's the thing. Question, folks, question. The northern migrations.
The Danubians?
The Danubians, let's call them that. Now, over the couple of thousand years of or 1500, whatever, of them travelling inland via rivers, and early on via lakes as well, of course. But by the time they got to France, to that area of France, had they retained any seafaring skills? And, my lord, I would argue, no, they had not.
No.
And so the question mark is, who were the first people to attempt to make it across the Channel or further beyond to Ireland? Would it have been people that have retained their seafaring skills, or would it have been the people that had come up the Danube and forgotten how to haul a sail? To put it facetiously.
It's a really nice point to raise. And I think that in itself we might be oversimplifying it there. Okay. Because, well, the thing is that you're still going to have interactions between different peoples, at any point along those routes. Now, certainly the people who continued working the Iberian Peninsula and up into France, that they certainly they retained all their ocean-going skills. The people coming up the Danube can be a bit lively.
But not by the time it gets to...
No. So different sets of skills. But the other thing, of course, is that if we're that far back, then the hop between northern France and southern England, it's still a glorified estuary at that point.
Yeah,
really. So the Danubians could have, certainly if you look at the Medway tombs.
Yeah.
In Kent, southern Britain. So we know that people were travelling from the continent back then. If they were going across that short route, then don't need major maritime skills there, do you?
No.
So it could still have been either the Danubians or the Iberians.
Okay. Yeah. And here's the other thing. Isn't a lot of the genetic, the ancestry from Neolithic burials in Ireland, don't they have the Iberian quotient?
Well remembered. I think they do.
As well as the Anatolian from far back, but they seem to be from that. And all the Irish mythology, it points to that people coming from those kinds of areas rather than from the land-based areas.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's worth mentioning. But I think the first farmers in Ireland at least seem to be carrying genetics from the Iberian Peninsula, and maybe the first people to come across into Kent. Those early tombs, the Medway tombs, down there in Kent, maybe, mind you, that's a megalithic tradition. So that is something that would have come out from, well, at least Jersey or Guernsey, maybe, because the megalithic spread is from Brittany. There we go. Yes. Question marks, you see? I mean, it's a debated point. It's not that we don't know, we haven't done the research. It's that the argument amongst archaeologists is still there about who got to
there is no
these parts of the world first.
And we can interpret what there is, but more data needs to be found in order to be able to come down one way or the other. Any which way,
yes,
boats were utterly essential whichever way they came.
Yes, of which we have very few or none, really, for the period we're now talking about. Absolutely zero.
No, which is quite shocking, really.
We've got depictions on the side of huge megaliths in Brittany that some interpreters representing boats or whales, depending which way you we look at it. So many arguments about that. But the indirect evidence of people sailing, obviously they got here and they brought stuff with them, and they were trading stuff. So, and the other thing to measure is looking out at the sea. It's pretty calm today, and I can't see many boats here. It's been a bit choppy the last few days. And you think, would I really? How do I feel about venturing out onto that? What sort of a vessel will I feel secure in?
Yes,
going out in on that.
But I think if you've been, if you've lived with the sea, you've grown up with the sea, you used to go out with your dad or whatever, that, I mean, certainly, now, I never had a dugout, but you did. But when my boys were smaller and we used to go out, we had a dive boat, and we would deliberately go out when it was really rough because it was just so exhilarating. Now, with an inflatable, you know you're not going to sink.
Inflatable and an outboard motor.
And an outboard motor, you know you're not going to sink. But I just think that if you have grown up with the sea, then I'm not saying you would go out on crazy rough waters. It's not necessary. But I do think that they would have looked at some weather conditions and just known that they could deal with that.
I can handle that.
Yeah, I think they would. But I just think that boats would have been so deeply culturally embedded.
Absolutely. But also, part and parcel of that is you wouldn't go out unless huge part of the security of being able to get where you're going is navigation.
Yeah, now therein lies a whole... Okay, so you do have the basic things of you just need to see where the sky is brightest to know that's so the sun is approximately there. Obviously, I'm talking about in cloudy weather. So you know roughly what time of day it is. You would know roughly what direction you were heading. Now, if you were going for more specifics, navigating by the stars, not a problem. During the day in bad weather conditions, if you're going somewhere specific, so if you set out from here to go 100 miles or whatever it is to the north coast of Brittany, well, there's a lot of latitude there for getting it wrong.
Currents, crosswinds, whatever.
So I don't know what those navigations... We take that for granted, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, just to sail from the beach here to the headland, what is it over there? Salcombe.
Salcombe right down there, yes.
Salcombe right down there. You'd have to think about it hard before you set off. Which way the tide's going. Do you know which way the currents are going?
It's a good point, and I do wonder if another aspect of our modern mindset, getting things slightly distorted, that we think everything we think must be urgent. I need it now. Whereas would you just keep your eye on the water, even if it took 2 weeks, and say, no, okay, we can go today. As opposed to getting impatient because you really want to go now. don't know.
Setting out to sea, whether you're coast hopping or what have you, is a complicated and a thoughtful process, and requires quite deep knowledge to be secure in doing it.
Maybe if you put that the other way around, I often have these little flights of fancy and think things like how funny it would be to get Leonardo da Vinci in a car and drive him down a country lane like this at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, bless.
And he would think that we were utterly insane.
Correct.
And being dangerous, which, to be fair, we would have been.
Point well made.
But the thing is that we get into a car
yeah.
and we travel with a lethal weapon at 70 miles an hour, and we don't think anything of it at all. And so I think those seafaring folks would probably have had that, the boating so sorted,
almost,
that they probably wouldn't have worried so much, I think.
Good point. Well made. And in the absence of the kind of evidence in this part of the world, although we're talking about a little bit, a few thousand years more recent than what we've been talking about in the Aegean and the early Neolithic in the Mediterranean, and the the precious Marmotta canoes.
Yes.
There's nothing else in this period. So we've got to jump to the Bronze Age. Now, there's a whole story about bronze now. We've just uncovered...
Can of worms.
Can of worms. About the creation of bronze. But I think the next stage, almost, I think there's a kind of explosion. There must have been an explosion in trade, in the seafaring trade in the Bronze Age.
Yes.
Explain why, Rupert.
Are we talking about the tin?
Well, I think, it's got to be a large part of it, hasn't it?
Well, it's quite a shocking new piece of research, isn't it? That because with laboratory techniques now that you can analyze isotopes of take your pick and find global fingerprints, if you like, and so this discovery, very recent discovery, that the entire European Bronze Age was basically fueled by tin from Cornwall and Devon.
Yeah.
Here. Yes, absolutely, right here, or a little bit west of here.
Yeah.
Now, there are so many aspects to that which are enthralling. Now, basically, the biggest pieces of evidence are the ingots that they've found from shipwrecks. So, once again, it takes for ships to sink for us to know these things. But so they've found ingots of tin and copper, but we're talking about tin here. And they've found them off the coast of Israel, off the coast of Greece, off the coast of Turkey, off the coast of Britain, off the coast of southern France. Now, all these ingots having come from just down the coast here.
Yeah, and just to frame this a bit, we haven't come that far forward because we've hardly left the Neolithic.
No.
This is, synchronized, about the time that Stonehenge had gone up just, and the Beaker people were coming over. And because of Stonehenge, we tend to focus on that as a focus area because there's so much evidence around there. But I think they'd been much more interested in what was going on in Devon and Cornwall at the time because of the resource of the tin.
Well, it's a fascinating thing that it's easy to make the wrong judgments on certain things because, for example, we know that there's earlier use of bronze in a few places in Europe, but they could, there's even some theories that they could be not accidental, but so localized because tin is extremely rare across the planet, sources of tin. And it's a funny thing, because again, modern mindset that, particularly of our age, we grew up with tin cans.
Yes.
so this notion of tin being rare, it's just what? Seriously? But of course, now that we're looking at aluminium cans, and so it's a completely distorted view of stuff. But the fact that we've got these ingots that were shipped from here. So now you look at the leapfrogging again. You look at the way that, so the evidence for that trade, going right the way over to the Eastern Mediterranean. So what were the trade routes that have linked those maritime places? So the guys who wrote this paper, they really did their research on pulling together the archaeology that has shown that, well, if you're using this and it's going here, then what's in between? And can we find evidence that maybe even the pottery that's been found here could have come from here as well? So linking together trade routes. And they produced a map of going all the way from Britain right the way over to Anatolia, and looking at this network of potential trade routes of how these ores were being transported. And when you think that there is bronze materials that could not have existed without the trade from here, that puts quite a different complexion on everything we thought about. Because it was always historically, we always thought that the Bronze Age was happening on the continent centuries before here. And yet what the analysis is showing is that, yes, but that bronze came from, the tin for that bronze came from here. So it's this kind of mixing pot of, well, do we know, maybe we weren't using the bronze so quickly here, but we were certainly providing the raw materials in order for it to be happening there. That's a big one.
That is such a deep dive, though. I mean, if we do the bronze thing is a whole other program, which we will probably do. I expect in the fullness of time, because it's such a head exploding turnaround.
Yeah,
we can't deal with it here. But it begs the question for me: is what came first? It's a chicken and the egg situation, because it's a different prospect, isn't it? Trading in metals and ingots.
But it changed everything.
There you go. What I'm thinking of is from a physical point, ship loading point of view. There you go.
Yeah. So the interesting thing for me, one of the interesting things for me, is that we know that working metal had been going on for a long time. So we've got the beautiful gold working at Varna. Now, people working in gold and copper for however long. And then suddenly the discovery that, well, if you put tin in with this, then suddenly it makes something that's usable in a whole different way.
Yeah.
And then you start looking at this explosion of stuff being carried everywhere. The shipwrecks, the Bronze Age shipwrecks at Salcombe, just down the coast, that away, that
we can actually almost see where it is.
We can pretty much see it.
Yeah. And it's remarkable, just worth saying, it's remarkable that we're in almost, visible line of sight of where they were, and they are one of very, very few.
Yes.
So it's crazy.
Well, there were two boats that went down at a place called Moor Sands at Salcombe. And the thing is that they had cargoes of, there were weapons on there were swords and axes and lots of ingots. I think one of the boats had 41 tin ingots on it. That's a lot of tin.
Yeah.
and if you only need 10% tin, because that was the standard, that was the normal ratio to bronze back then. So 10% tin, that means that your ingots are actually going to make quite a lot of bronze.
Yeah.
And when you then look at the absolute extreme, what is the pinnacle of the shipwrecks that we know? Uluburun, off the south coast of Turkey, where the cargo on that ship is staggering. And we're talking about, so it's a Bronze Age vessel. What is it, 3,500 years old, I think it is. The list of, you read the full cargo list, and it's completely mind-boggling that clearly this ship had been travelling all the way around, probably all the way around the Mediterranean and the Aegean, picking up all this cargo, or other people had been doing it and taking it to a trading point, and this ship had just loaded up from there. That's also a possibility, I suppose. But the numbers of ingots that were found on the Uluburun shipwreck, and the intriguing thing is that it looks as if there is actually a debate going on where some people think that the chemical analysis of the ingots says that it could have come from here. Some people argue that point and think that it might not have done. Either way, the fact that we had two shipwrecks down here with 40 odd ingots on them, and you have the Uluburun shipwreck that had, I can't remember how many ingots there were on the Uluburun shipwreck, but it was a lot. And so whether the Uluburun tin came from here or not, the point is the two of them together are showing just how huge this trade is. They're not taking products, they're taking materials that will be made into products. So, the fact that it's the wholesale trade, isn't it? It's just, for me, it puts everything on a completely different scale. Yeah.
The variety and the economics involved, the enterprise, the entrepreneurship behind the scenes that has to have been going on in order for a ship to be laden in that kind of way. What markets were being served by whom, when. And now, we've been talking for quite a long time, and even for us that's quite a long time, but we've only just scratched the surface. We've exhausted our readily available knowledge, I think.
Well, we could sit here and talk for another 2 hours.
We probably could, but there is so much more to go into. Just talking about, as soon as you start shipping ingots of metal, like I said, were there the ships pre-existing? Were they substantial enough ships pre-existing that could transport stuff at this scale, or did they have to up their game as far as
interesting question.
As far as the vessels were concerned? And were the networks pre-existing, along which these things could travel, or did they have to invent? Was it the sort of, did they have to invent or sort of create a Northwest Passage, as it were, in order to make this economic thing viable? Make bronze and power, this is all about power, isn't it? I guess at the end of the day. But if we've done one job, if at the end of our talking we've done one job, and that's just skew the perspective away from land-based stuff and just focused, given an appreciation of how essential sea travel and the ability to do so it would have been in the past, then then hopefully we've done a good job. I can't think really of anything. I mean, those, we talk about Phoenicians and all sorts of artifacts that have been found all over the Mediterranean, Sardinia, Malta, and just all over the place. It's almost too much. It is too much to take in one program.
Well, yes, if you start talking about pottery as well.
Yeah. Where will it end? Well, actually, I think it ends now.
Yes, probably wise.
Anyway, well, I hope if you watched all this that you found it really, really interesting. And if you have seen this, there may already be on the channel a program about shipwrecks, which may fill in a bit more detail around Aruba and some of the other stuff that was going on.
Yes, we'll go into some more specific about particular boats.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you've made it so far, thank you so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you around another time.
See ya.
Bye for now.